Yeah, so that's me. That's my company, which I started 2 years ago, and we're making games that are based in the theory that's in this talk. So I love video games, but most of my friends find video games boring. Everywhere I go, I meet people who aren't interested in video games. My favorite thing at a dinner party or on a Tinder date is to watch other people squirm and struggle to relate when I mention I work in games. They'll bring up some old game they used to play, try to talk about it, and then confess that they don't care about video games. I wrote an article about that last year that went viral, which was a surprise. I made the case that the multitudes of white masculine gamers who dominate the games industry have made experiences that are relevant to them but not to most people. When you work only with experts and with people similar to yourself, you tend to get stuck in what's called a local maximum. You refine your own solution to a problem and make it better and better, but you don't discover radically different solutions that would be radically better. This is how we get, for example, stagnant AAA games. It's also how we get so much Match 3. I love Match 3, but it's not the only thing out there that we could find. And in that article, I also made the case that life is really difficult, that our world has changed fast, and that as the wealthy are ascending further and the weather is turning more and more unfamiliar, and our jobs are floundering, and we're all gazing with horrified fascination into our phones, we're all overwhelmed with shock. Inspired by the artist Harry Giles, I made the case that what my friends are looking for in art and in entertainment is relief from this constant state of shock. I made the case that video games that are about care and characters would be more culturally relevant to more people. But I think that it's not only for cultural reasons that my friends prefer care to shock. I think there's also an underlying physiological reason why it's like this, and I think that this has something to do with stress reactions. And I think that this holds a key to the future of a stronger, more interesting, and more relevant games industry for more people. So when you're playing a video game and there are a lot of things flashing on screen, and there's danger, and it's shocking, and it's fun, that's a fight or flight response. With fight or flight, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in and releases adrenaline, followed by dopamine. If you like games like this, it's probably because adrenaline and dopamine are very enjoyable. Your pupils dilate, your heart beats faster, your airways open up, and you feel exhilarated, you feel alive, and you feel powerful. But not everyone likes these types of games. I don't. My friends don't. People I talk to at the bus stop don't. I think my friends find games like this boring, not only because they aren't interested in more stories about callous white men, and not only because they don't know how the controls work or don't get the references to geek culture, but also because they don't get an adrenaline high. They have a different response to stress. So this is my cousin Christina. If you read that article I wrote called Video Games Are Boring, you might remember her. And she's one of my friends who finds video games boring. What she loves instead are contemporary feminist art, vegan food, and longboarding with her friends. She's never understood why I work in games, and has often encouraged me to go back to school to study industrial design or interior design or some other type of design that's more relevant for her frame of reference. A few years ago, Christina's husband's brother bought a PS4, and he gave her his old PS3. I recommended that she play my favorite game, Skyrim, but I didn't expect her to actually play it. She's so uninterested in games. And I didn't hear from her for 3 weeks, and I thought she didn't play it. And then one evening, she called me crying because she had accidentally killed Lydia. And I think we all have a Lydia story. Christina finds video games boring, but she loved Skyrim. She isn't interested in medieval warfare. She isn't interested in swords. She isn't interested in dragons. She isn't interested in fighting of any type. And she found the controls hard. But she loved Skyrim because she loved the characters. After a long day of office politics and being catcalled in the street and seeing Trump's face all over TV and experiencing all other daily hostilities in the world, Christina doesn't like being shocked in a game, but she loves taking care. She loved creating her character, doing quests for other characters, joining guilds, and bringing Lydia along on her adventures. She said to me that it turns out that It wasn't that she didn't like video games, it was that she didn't know what video games could be. Christina doesn't like adrenaline, and neither do I. But with Skyrim, there's something similar that is probably going on with us, and it's called tend-and-befriend. And like fight or flight, tend-and-befriend is an automatic physiological reaction to threat. It's not something you think about, it's just something you do. If you experience tend-and-befriend, it's because your body releases oxytocin or vasopressin when you're stressed, followed by opioids. This calms your sympathetic nervous system so you don't get a flood of adrenaline. Instead of wanting to fight or to flee, you stay relatively calm but aware. Your pupils dilate, you become fearless, and you're less sensitive to pain. You instinctively want to protect your loved ones, to seek out your allies, and to form new alliances. Oxytocin intensifies social feelings, and opioids feel extremely warm and lovely. Oh, this slide's not supposed to be empty, but I don't care for adrenaline, but I really, really like this. This feels delicious, luscious, and powerful. And at this gif of like Angelina Jolie looking very satisfied. But the oxytocin opioid thing isn't limited to threatening interactions. It's also there when you touch or even think about someone you love. It's very much there during sex. It's there when you play fetch with your dog or chill out with your cat. It's there when you look at a cute baby. It's even there when you exclude someone you don't like, when you gossip. When I first read about tend-and-befriend, I suddenly understood myself so much better. I thought, shit, this is how I usually react to stress. It's how I usually react to most things. And it's not just me, and it's not just my friends. When people are stressed, we tend to affiliate more often than to brawl. It seems most women and many men have the tend-and-befriend reaction. It's possible that this could be our dominant stress response in general. But had you heard of it before? Maybe not. It's barely been studied. It's barely been discussed. It's barely just been identified. In 1998, some researchers at the UCLA Social Neuroscience Lab were attending a talk by a prominent stress researcher in which he said, "We shocked the animals, and of course they all attacked each other," just kind of offhand as part of his presentation. This statement struck these researchers from UCLA as obviously not descriptive of humans. So they looked into it, and by 2000, Dr. Shelley E. Taylor and her colleagues had identified the tend-and-befriend response in this paper. Why so late? Why not until 2000? The answer is blinkered researchers and their bad samples. Like much other research in many other fields, most stress research had been done with men and with male animals, male rats. Prior to 1995, only 17% of stress research had been done with women or with female animals. Throughout many fields, when female bodies don't fit the data, the researchers blame menstruation, throw the female data out of the sample, and keep going. I'm not kidding. And that's exactly what happened in stress research. What's more, when it comes to studying humans rather than animals, many researchers across many fields access what is known as the weird sample: white, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. This is also not a comprehensive sample, and most researchers also belong to this sample. When you work only with people similar to yourself, you tend to get stuck in local maxima. I grew up being taught that fight or flight was my stress response, but it's not. And it's not only stress research that skews male and skews weird. It's a lot of research, it's a lot of design, it's a lot of researchers, and it's a lot of designers. For those of us who aren't white, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic men, it's possible many things we know about ourselves are wrong. "80% of drug studies that are done in mice are done with male mice only. In neuroscience, studies of male animals outnumber studies of female animals by 11 to 2. 70% of pain patients are women, but 80% of pain studies use only male rodents. We also see these kind of oversights in the design of cities. We see it in the generally accepted room temperature for public spaces. Until 2011, we saw it in the design of airbags. Until 2009, we saw it in the understanding of the shape of the clitoris. We see it in the diagnosis of ADHD and Asperger's. We see it in the typical symptoms for heart attacks, and that affected one of my friend's parents' lives recently, and also leads to the fact that of young people who have heart attacks, young women are twice as likely to die as young men. We see this bias in the design of color film, and from there in the design of face tracking and eye tracking. We see it in the design of VR hardware. We see it all over the games industry, and it's really fucking boring. It exposes a lack of imagination, a lack of care, and it harms people. Think, fuck this. I understand how it happens. A casual dismissal of other perspectives comes easily when someone has had his own perspectives validated throughout his life, when bodies like his have been studied by science, when bodies like his have been designed for, when characters like him are all over film and television and video games and the news, when his confidence has been repeatedly interpreted as competence, and when his bosses and mentors see themselves in him and make space for him. But I think it's more than cluelessness. I think some of it is also based in fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of loss of status, fear of loss of power. But neither cluelessness nor fear leads to good ideas, and neither cluelessness nor fear are good for the long-term health, status, or power of any industry. A prominent games researcher told me once that he too doesn't try to study women because you can't predict women. This statement strikes me as obviously not descriptive of women. I was horrified at the time. A technical director on a AAA screamed in my face once that he hates feminists and that I don't belong in the games industry. I was disgusted, but I also wondered where his fear came from. Meanwhile, I've watched multiple teams searching for new kinds of gun-free gameplay without thinking outside of recreating the same natural and quite rightly beloved adrenaline high. They're missing some data, they're missing some perspectives they could ask. Then a boss of mine declared in the face of focus groups and research proving otherwise that my target market craves only Vogue magazine and not also deep character systems. I think maybe he was scared of what he doesn't understand, but also too lazy to try to understand it. Finally, I laughed my way right out of that job and into my own studio. Since then, a few mobile executives have told me that women only like Match 3. One told me that my insight about shock and care in video games was more about my own personal psychology than any generalized trend. That was right before my article went viral, but I guess he also never heard of tend-and-befriend and never really looked at or talked with people who aren't like him. A woman I very much respect told me that you can't change the world, but you can make your little corner of it better. I found my little corner. I'm bored of patriarchy and its lasting effects on my life, on all of our lives, but I'm very interested in looking at the gaps in game design and fixing them. Are you? Are you interested in building towards an inclusive, robust, relevant, profitable, and just future? So then what is game design missing? I ask this question not just in terms of cultural elements, not just in terms of diverse protagonists, not just in terms of references beyond fantasy and science fiction and modern-day warfare and nostalgic pixel art. I ask this question in terms of game mechanics and game systems. I ask in terms of adrenaline, dopamine, oxytocin, opioids, and other reward systems. I ask in terms of gameplay that helps a wider range of people understand themselves and their responses to stress and to the world. What do we take for granted about play styles and about player motivation and other frameworks that we use to think about great games? What do we take for granted about fun? Could some of this be wrong or incomplete? Why are game genres defined the way they are, and can we think outside of them? What does it take to induce a flow state in the player? Does it always require frustration? What's happening here? Who designed all these rules? What players are we studying? Who should we be talking with? I know who I'm talking with. I know who I'm working with. And I know that I've never been so satisfied with or felt so connected with my work. Learning about tend-and-befriend helped me understand not just how I react to stress, but to most things, and why I can be overly compassionate and overly petty and other things, both good and bad. It gave me perspective on my life and who I am, and it gave me new strategies for how to develop some of my strengths and how to alleviate some of my struggles. And this is what I want from entertainment. I want a safe space where I can explore who I am and what my life is, where I can gain an understanding of myself and my life and the people around me, where I can care and where I can relate and where I can grow. And then I can bring these lessons back into my corner of the world and make it better. Isn't that what most of us want? And if not, why not? And I want to be clear that care is not weak, simple, or cute. It doesn't only belong in simple or cute games. Audre Lorde said that caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. Caring for your chosen loved ones and the formation of new alliances are sophisticated actions that are likewise acts of warfare. It requires bravery to speak up, to reach out, and to build towards something new. Care is stronger than brutality or fear. Are you strong enough? Maybe, maybe not, but together we can be. No matter who you are, I ask you to question your assumptions about yourself, about other people, and about games. Get the real data. Talk to people different than yourself. And if you're lucky enough to not fit into the game developer stereotype, look into your own heart. Maybe everything we know is wrong, but you're right. And we can find each other and we can work together. We can make games that help us understand ourselves and our lives. This is where video games can shine, not just as bright as, but brighter than other media. And these are games that will carry us into a more respectful, more respected, and strengthened future, a connected future. This is an industry I would want to work in. This is a world I would want to live in. Maybe I'm here to take away the boys' games after all. Thank you. So I went faster than I was supposed to, so I think we can do maybe questions.
So we all know what life feels like.
Yes.
Shortness of breath, arousal. How would you describe the feeling?
Yeah, so fight or flight, like your pupils dilate, your skin becomes more conductive, you feel like, yeah, exactly. So tend and befriend, it's similar, except you feel like very calm and really aware, things slow down. Actually, I have this, one time I saw a bear in the forest, and I was really scared, I just like kind of froze. Everything slowed down, everything became very clear, because my pupils were dilated. And then I was walking on the forest and just, I turned a corner and right in front of my face was this owl. And it was like eye height. I don't know why an owl was out in the middle of the day, but I just remember like looking into the eyes of the owl and it looking at me, and then it blinked, and then I blinked, and then like slowly took off. But the whole thing like felt like it lasted way longer than it did. I felt like I super connected with the owl, which I'm sure I didn't. But so yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we have to have like good AI. We should be developing good AI. We should put some energy there rather than just like really detailed environments. I'm working on 6 different concepts. One is just really literal and not complex, easy and cheap to develop in a small startup. It's a game about self-care, and it's basically a Tamagotchi meets WarioWare with no time limits. Then I have another one that is more of a long-term project, and it's a game I'm making with my cousin from the talk, and it's all the stuff she liked about Skyrim without the stuff she didn't like and the stuff that I wish was in there. So I am working on a narrative system where generated quests chain together and feel like handwritten quests. And so there's this kind of characters that populate the world that have like archetypes, and they relate with each other through social structures, and so there's like drama in the world that happens like generatively. Yeah.
Have you ever considered going back to AAA and start a system
I tried. Yeah. I failed. Yeah. And it hurt. Yeah. So there's a lot of research about if you're like an underrepresented group in a workplace that's filled with a group that is dominant. So in a male-dominated industry, for women to have influence and not be sidelined or stereotyped, there kind of needs to be, is it 20 or 30? I think it's 30% women in that environment before women are taken seriously.
It's more of an addition than a question because I wanted to thank you for it. I just noticed that I was sick some time ago and developed a strange obsession with the game Stardew Valley, which is exactly what you're
Yes.
about because it's handing a garden and befriending people from a village. And it was really something while I was sick that really helped me. And thank you. I'm just now understanding what I did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good feeling.
Is there like good resources to go to find out more about the tend-and-befriend?
Yeah, it's barely been studied, but that UCLA group, Dr. Shelley E. Taylor, she's the one studying it. And basically, she published that paper in 2000. There's another report she wrote in 2011 that I found online. But they're still doing current research. They've started to look at tend-and-befriend in men now. Yeah. Okay, thank you.